What is going on, everybody? Today is a big day for Nick Sands Presents because we are out here with one of the foremost experts on, not sex education.
There's some sex education going on.
Sex education, sex therapy?
Yep, coaching and counseling, I would say.
Coaching and counseling.
I have a certificate in pelvic health sexuality counseling.
Along with, an inventor, a runner, a marketing genius, a fundraising expert, a networking.
Flattery will get you everywhere.
Just absolutely one of my favorite people. Rachel, I don't even know your real last name.
MacNeill.
MacNeill.
Yep.
I always call you Rachel Rad because one time you showed up and you were had a mohawk and you had this super cool jacket. And I was like, fuck, she's way cooler than me. So in my phone, you're Rachel Rad.
Man,
so I know who
that
you
makes me really happy. I don't think anyone's characterizing me that way anywhere else.
No, well, as I've gotten to know you, I've realized how mistaken I was.
Not rad.
Actually, you know what? I can hold this.
Sure. Cool.
Maybe.
I can hold whatever you need.
Actually, maybe can you hold it in the other hand? Mm-hmm. And then I can just, all I need is that cover.
Sweet.
There we go. All right. So we are out here, and I just wanted to give Rachel, because what an unusual job.
Many.
You know what I mean? Well, many unusual jobs, but specifically the sex therapy.
Yeah.
How did you get into that? What does that entail?
Yeah. So, first and foremost, I'm a pelvic health physical therapist. So I treat men and women for urinary incontinence, fecal incontinence, pain with sex, sexual dysfunction, things like that. And that's my clinical...
You lost me the first half there. I was like, wow, this is not as cool as I thought it was.
Incontinence?
I was like, I think I may have vastly misunderstood what you do.
So you don't pee yourself during sex. That is also important. But so that's my clinical job. I work a couple days a week over at Portsmouth Hospital treating patients there. But I treat so many patients with pain with sex. And I have my own experience surviving a sexless marriage, actually. And when I see my patients in the clinic, I always ask them at eval, are you having sex and are you happy with frequency? And that usually opens up Pandora's box, especially when most of my patients are women, into issues of desire mismatches in their relationships, some of the pain stuff that I talked about. And my philosophy is anything we enjoy doing, you shouldn't have to convince us to do. And so I think women think, oh, I don't really want to have sex. And low libido does exist, clinical low libido. But most women are not dealing with clinical low libido. Most women are dealing with a desire issue because the things that they're doing with their partners are not pleasing to them or are not things that they look forward to. So the reason I started, it's called Rachel MacNeill Intimacy Coaching. The reason I started that was to help couples, mostly straight couples, work on these desire mismatches and in particular figure out what women could be enjoying more that would have them looking forward to sex and kind of switch up this paradigm that is men want it, women don't, that kind of tired stereotype.
So it kind of sounds almost like it's 90% of your job is just figuring out a communications issue.
Yeah, kind
of. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and I think it's communication between partners, but I also think it's women understanding that they kind of need to understand themselves better first.
Yep.
And that maybe part of the problem, and this is where some of the gendered stuff comes in, but maybe part of the problem is that they don't know what they don't know. And so they don't even know what the options are on the table that they might be excited by. They're doing the same thing over and over, and they just kind of have accepted, as men have, because we're all socialized, in the same context, that this is kind of just the way it is, and this, again, myth of female low libido, which...
Could you give an example that's real, concrete that maybe you see a lot that could explain in more layman's terms what you're saying?
Sure. So I think the most common example is when we think about penetration, penis and vagina sex, right?
Right.
I think most straight couples think that is sex. Anything else that happens is foreplay. But most women, even how our bodies are built, our anatomy and our physiology, most women are not going to get a lot of sexual enjoyment, physical pleasure from penetration. So it might be something they enjoy for closeness with their partner or whatever, but all the stuff that we are typically characterizing as foreplay is usually the stuff that women are going to enjoy the most. And so when I think about shifting a paradigm, it's kind of okay, women you could have a sexual encounter with a woman that lasts 2 hours, has nothing to do with penetration, and she has like multiple orgasms, right? That's not usually happening because it's like, oh, here's the 5 minutes that I do whatever, because I have to like warm you up, so to speak. And then we have sex and you're dissatisfied and you feel like as a woman, you're giving in this relationship and not getting in return. And that's kind of true because you're not getting kind of more experience with the stuff that you really would enjoy. Is that concrete?
That did. I think that makes sense. The reason I laughed is because I'm thinking about like trying to like really maintain my facial composure so as not to give any of the information I'm learning for the first time.
Right, exactly. Wait, say that again. Come again.
Huh?
Well, but I think, that makes a lot of sense. So as I said, I was married to a man. I was in a straight relationship. I got divorced because we were seeing a therapist. And at one point, this therapist pulled me aside and was like, Rachel, you're in the clinical definition of a sexless marriage. And I knew it was bad, but I didn't know it was that bad. And I thought, I'm gonna die someday. I am not trying to die like this. And it made me realize, like, I didn't know what I didn't know. And it wasn't until I'm married to a woman now, it wasn't until I started having...
Wait, you're gay? No, I'm just kidding.
I'm gay, yeah, I'm super gay. And I was all along. So, the divorce, as sad as it was, it's good that it happened that way. But then I started to realize, oh my gosh, I used to be one of those people who was like, how do women have sex? Like, what do they do? And now I realize, oh my God, I was so blind because I'd only ever been with men that like, nose running, that I didn't have...
I can carry the umbrella for a little bit if you want.
Oh no, I'm good. That I didn't realize, like, no, all the other stuff is the fun stuff. I just, like we're saying, had this idea that like penis and vagina sex was the thing. And when that wasn't super enjoyable to me, I thought I didn't like sex. And that's just not the case. And I think straight women don't get the benefit of the experiences I've had all the time. And so part of what I love to do, it's like my mission just to help people understand, you don't have to leave men entirely and sleep with a bunch of women in order to be sexually satisfied. You just have to understand the ways maybe that this like heteronormative model has limited you and limited your pleasure and what you get out of sex.
So what do you think... I noticed you mentioned a few times now that it's like a lot of straight relationships or mostly straight relationships. What do you think it is about straight relationships that sort of lends itself to that?
I really just think it's the way we're socialized from the time we're kids. Like, I think if you look anywhere in media, like men play this role where they're supposed to be the like aggressor, for lack of a better word. We expect men to initiate. We expect women to maybe be more demure. So we don't really, we're just, men and women are brought up that way. And so I think it's foreign to a lot of women to think of themselves as like, no, I'm a sexual creature in my own right. And there are things that I like that I'm going to be honest about and that have nothing to do with what it feels like to have penetrative sex, right? So I just think it's the culture we're brought up in. I think most people, and I mean, even, I don't think this is a good sex education, but even people who might watch porn or something, porn is all this way. Movies are this way. I can't speak for your sexual experience or maybe the people who are listening, but like, I just think as we're starting to explore sex, it's all this way. Like, what is losing your virginity? Penis and vagina sex, Right. So it's just like everything, that is the main event from the time we first learn about sex. Even when we have sex education that won't talk about pleasure, sex education like that is about what? Like making babies. Well, what's making babies? Penis and vagina sex. It's like, we're just so uncreative about it, I think.
Right. It almost sounds like you need to like separate the two, like procreation sex is separate from just like fun sex.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely reasonable.
I mean, I think that that's probably what people do mentally in their head anyways, but it sounds like there's almost needs to be like two separate forms of education about it.
Yeah, maybe, and I think the thing too is it's not like penis and vagina sex can't be part of the fun sex. It's just like there should be way more involved, in my opinion, than just that if we're going to make sure that everybody's having fun.
Do you think, so like one of the things that I actually spent a lot of time recently thinking about because I wrote a bit about it is that like growing up as like a millennial and getting this like, we sort of like started off with like analog pornography.
Yep.
And then we moved into like digital pornography. So it used to be like you either went to your friend's house and you all watched porn in a group and tried to remember it as long as you could until you got home. Right. Or you went out in the woods and found whatever forest porn there used to be for some reason, which was everywhere.
Wait, do you mean finding like videos and stuff out and about?
Well, no, you'd like go out. So it used to be like you'd go out in the woods and there'd just be like magazines out there for some reason.
Okay, that is so funny that you say that, because the first porn I ever saw was this guy I was friends with in high school who had a VHS tape, and he said he found the VHS tape like in the woods.
Yeah.
And I was like, this guy's pulling my chain. Like, he just had this video and he's like, no, dudes, I swear, I got it in the woods.
No, that's how it used to be. That's how it used to be. It used to be.
Oh my God.
It was like a scavenger hunt. You'd go out any section of woods in America, you could go out and if you wander around long enough, you'd find some stash of porn for some reason. That is
so funny. We store it in the cloud now. Before it was
yeah, now everybody just uses their phone, but before it was like those were the two ways that you got porn, or if like your friend had an older brother.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
And then like at some point when I was like 12, it switched over to like the internet.
Right.
And it was like all of the porn videos they didn't even have porn sites yet. It was like they were stored on the same like sort of awful websites where they had like beheading videos.
Oh God, yeah.
And like horrific nightmare videos.
Yeah, oh God.
And so it's like
also, isn't that just funny that we put that stuff together?
Yeah.
Like that the taboo of porn would be similar to the taboo of watching a beheading.
What I mean. part of the thing I wrote is that like I saw my first anal porn scene and my first beheading video back to back on the same website.
He grew up quick, y'all.
Isn't that crazy?
In the same 5-minute span.
Isn't that insane?
That is.
And that's sort of like we had like this unlimited amount of porn like almost instantaneously.
Wow, yeah, for sure.
Almost like kind of like halfway through our sexual development.
Right.
And then it's like, how did that affect how my brain worked? And like, I don't feel like I had a healthy relationship with sex for many, many years after that.
Yeah. Well, porn's so tough. Like, I think it has a place, right? Because especially for women who don't know what they enjoy, if you have this stigma around porn, like, you're not going to know what exists out there, right? So, like, I do encourage women, if they have no idea what they enjoy, and there are other ways of trying to figure it out, but one way they can is just like, go on Pornhub or whatever and look at things that just give you some kind of like visceral response. Maybe it's repulsion, maybe it's like titillation, it could be anything, but like look for those things. Thank you. Maybe, but you're looking for those things that give you some kind of reaction. So I think in some ways like porn is cool because we can see it all. That's what makes it good, but that's also what makes it bad, because I think when it's so like bonkers and then we have to come back into normal life and, you know, have even what we might consider like wild sex, it's you can find something way more wild on the internet. Chances are,
like some weird shit we get from Japan.
Right.
That involves octopi.
I mean, it could be animated even, and then you know it's truly not anything we can create in real life, right? Multiple penises on one monster.
I mean, there are people like that. If you have multiple penises, we're not disparaging it.
Absolutely not. Actually, congratulations. I'm sure that works out really well for you.
Sure, that's great. So that sort of brings into a topic I wanted to talk about, and that is is there a connection between like what we watch and what we are into? Like if someone is watching a type of porn that maybe they don't love at first, but they continue to watch it, will they eventually like sort of just develop this kind of like chemical reaction, I guess? Almost like what's that dog? Those dogs?
The Pavlov.
The Pavlov reaction to it?
Well, that's kind of interesting. I'm not sure if research exists about that, but I do think whether it's porn or real life experiences, another way that I like to help people access what they might be into is this idea of peak experiences. And I'm not the first one to come up with this. There's a guy who wrote a book about it. It's out of print now and I can't remember his name, but in any case, it's not my original thought.
It's not your original thought, but we cannot. You might as well just accept it at that point.
You know what it is.
She came up with this.
No, exactly. Tell everybody you know.
She wrote a book. It's out of print now.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, you can't find it? Oh, well, too bad. It does exist. But it's the idea of peak experiences. So like, when we think about it in terms of having had sex with a human being, I can think back in my life, again, especially if I'm, let's say, like a woman who has no idea what I'm into, I can think back on all my sexual experiences and think, okay, if I'm 43, as I am, and there are like 3 times that I remember that are really crystallized for me, then what was it about those 3 times? Is there something about like a power dynamic that existed? Is there something about the way the person I was with looked or smelled or some like sensory thing? So I can start to explore why that's a peak experience for me, and then what are the elements of that peak experience that I could bring into new experiences to kind of enhance my enjoyment of them. And I think the same could be true for porn, right? Like if even if you're watching something like radical, like I wouldn't even say it's radical. I feel like that's a judgment. But like, let's say I'm into like gangbangs.
Okay.
Right? Well, maybe I don't want to do that in real life, but what is it about the power dynamics going on? What is it about what I'm hearing or seeing, or what like roles when I'm watching that are the roles that I identify with versus the roles that I want to have like kind of like dominate in a scene like that? And then I could take it back even to a singular partner in a monogamous relationship. And even if I'm too embarrassed to say, hey, I got this idea from this porn I watched,
right,
I could at least have access to like, okay, like I want to try maybe this like power play a little bit because I know that this is something I keep being drawn to online. Right. So I don't know if, neural pathways, it seems logical that something I watch over and over and then start to associate with sexual.
So the reason that I actually came up with that is I read an article that said like one of the reasons that society is so sort of like caught up in this idea of like 2 random people encountering and then having sex without a similar relationship, like no strings attached to the relationship, is that we watch so much porn that is that way.
Yeah.
And so like if there was the idea was if there was more porn that like people were in like a regular relationship, that it would lead to people having sex as like a regular relationship.
But then you'd have to watch a series. Like you'd have to get into this whole thing.
Right.
If you're watching just one video, it kind of has to be an encounter like that.
Right.
You don't have the context.
Well, maybe you could just sort of subtly, like they both put on a wedding ring, right? They both,
instead of it being like
they
a pizza
both
delivery
redo their
guy.
vows.
Exactly. Right. They come from saying that was a beautiful vow renewal.
Let's get it on.
Right.
I got this pizza with extra sauce.
That's funny.
Well, that's gotta be with that in mind. That would be awful. Like every time you order Domino's.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, right. What's supposed to happen? I've only ever seen this in videos.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know how to have this interaction. I
Right.
mean, I do feel like there's probably some people who really do view the world that way through the lens of like the pornography they've seen.
Oh man, I think this
especially
is
when you're like a
definitely-
child.
Oh yeah.
Not a child, but like when you're going through puberty, you have no life experience.
Right.
And there's people, I know for a fact this is true because I watched a lot of porn when I was a kid.
Yeah, right.
And so like I very much understand what was going on.
Right.
So like you do kind of view the world almost as like this, like what would happen in a porn video
Right.
at this point in time. Why didn't that girl throw herself at me? You know what I mean?
Right. Well, I think you bring up a really good point. I think this is related to what we were talking about earlier. If I have no experience of sex, or even if I do a little bit, but most of my sexual experience is in porn, if I'm watching that stuff, what messages am I getting about what I should be doing as a boy or a man? And what, if I'm a girl, am I getting in terms of messaging about how I'm supposed to behave? And that is a lot of, whether it's coming from porn or societal cues or whatever, that is a lot of what I think does limit us when we don't understand that this is just one option and everything I'm taking in should be kind of like adding to my own identity and my own desire and things like that, and not just like, oh, well, I saw this one thing and so now I'm like stuck,
right. Well, I think too, it's like, it's still, although sex I feel like is much less taboo than it ever was, especially like kink stuff and like that
Right.
sort of opening up of that Pandora's box for good or bad.
For good.
I almost feel like it has the opposite. Well, I think it's good, but I also think I think that now there's more of a pressure to be into that. Whereas like maybe if you weren't into that, like you almost feel like you maybe not need to be, but you almost feel like you're supposed to be, or like that is the norm.
Yeah.
And so I think that maybe it might jade you in the opposite direction, where like if that's not something you're into, you feel as though there's maybe something wrong with you for not being into that.
Well, and I think that makes sense. And that could be also like circles that I'm not running in anymore. But I think, have you ever heard of Dan Savage?
No.
And Savage Love. So there's this guy, Dan Savage. He had a column.
What an industry. What an industry you're a part of.
He had a column in like local, like free newspapers for a really long time. Now he has a podcast called Savage Love. But he has this concept that's been borrowed by people over and over.
That you wrote.
Since. Yeah. So if you've never heard of it, it's my original idea. But it's called, the concept is like, if you want to be a good lover, you need to be good, giving, and game. Meaning you need to have skills, right? So you need to not be lazy about making sure that you know what the heck you're doing, what the anatomy is, stuff like that. You need to be giving in that you want to be a generous lover. You don't want to take. You want to have that give and take, whatever that means in the context of the relationship. And you want to be game, meaning even if there's something that you wouldn't necessarily gravitate toward, kind of like the mentality of like, well, you know, I'll try anything once. As long as it doesn't really violate some boundary I know I have, like I'm willing to try. So I think whether you're into kink or not, like just having that good giving game attitude is really what makes people good in bed, regardless of any kind of like different fantasies they might have that do align or don't align.
Right. Mm-hmm. Also, kink is so broad now. It used to be like, it's so such like a broad statement now.
For sure.
Because it used to just be like, you picture the guy from, what the fuck is the name of that movie? Not Reservoir Dogs. Pulp Fiction. You picture the gimp from Pulp Fiction.
Oh, yeah.
And that's like your understanding of what kink is for 30 years.
Right,
and then, again, then the internet comes along and you find out, oh, wait, there's all this other shit that goes along with it. Right.
So, and more or less tame than that Pulp Fiction example, too.
Exactly. More intense or less intense.
Right.
Which is weird to think for like someone who's not into that, sees that and probably thinks that's like the most extreme thing.
Right. Ooh, you do not have an internet connection yet, or know where to go to find out, right? And maybe you shouldn't.
I mean,
if you're concerned.
It is funny that that's sort of like this thing that's held over for so long in our DNA. I mean, like, it's not funny. It's just like we've sort of, as humans, like it's hard to think of ourselves as animals at this point.
Yeah.
But like there's this piece of us that like at the end of the day, like we really have 2 or 3 biological initiatives.
Right.
And one of them is to procreate.
Right.
And then it's like eat and breathe are the other 2. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's funny that we've sort of solved all of these other things, and yet this thing that is so much a part of us.
Right.
So much a part of us, and like this is still so taboo.
Right.
And while those walls are breaking down, you know, I mean, Jesus, if someone from the 20s watched,
oh my God,
even just like cable TV today, they would probably die.
You know, I know.
They couldn't take it.
Right.
If someone from the 20s took a gas station boner pill, they would die.
Yeah, right.
They would drop dead within 15 minutes.
Exactly.
They would know the best 15 minutes of their life.
Right. Exactly. But also a very confusing 15 minutes.
Yeah, very confusing, kind of painful, but really good.
Yeah, right.
15 minutes of their life.
Right. No, it's true. I mean, I don't know if that's evolution or not, but definitely. I mean, in some ways, it's like, you know, the culture we live in of like instant gratification and stuff has definitely made some of this challenging too. Again, when I don't think for a lot of women, like moving quickly, forgetting if we call it foreplay or not, like that often is not the thing, and it takes us a little time to warm up. So I think, I mean, basically everything, if we've evolved in a lot of ways, great. I think the one way we haven't evolved a ton is really in understanding women's pleasure in all of this, truly.
If anything, we've gone backwards.
Kind of.
I feel like most societies at some point had some sort of book about this.
Right.
You know?
Where's our book?
Yeah, we don't have like a Karma Sutra, you know what I mean?
Right,
in 10,000 years,
yeah,
no alien civilization is going to be looking at the millennials book for fucking.
Right. No, please don't, actually. You can do better, I have no doubt. That's why the people need help.
So what is it about sex in our society do you think that's like has sort of held that back from becoming more of a acceptable thing? Because I mean, it must make your job hard.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes it fun because in some ways, even as we're talking about this, like people might think they have huge sexual problems, And then in like a conversation or two, when you like destigmatize some of what's going on, turn down the heat a little bit by helping people understand that this is happening to everybody, like it actually can move really quickly. I think, like I said, when people just get like, oh, hey, yeah, I think it's a simple but profound idea that anything we enjoy doing, you shouldn't have to convince us to do, because then it's like, oh, so all I have to do is figure out what I enjoy doing and pursue that, because then I'm going to look forward to it.
Right.
You know, so I think in some ways it is very simple, but I think the thing that has held us back is all that we're talking about, because when you take the combination of taboo, that we're not talking about it a ton, especially, I mean, women with their male partners, I don't think communication between men and women is always great.
I keep up with it too.
Yeah, not at all. Gale force winds.
Don't want to grab it? I'm much heavier. It's going to have a harder time pulling me away.
It's my weak arm.
No, it's not. It's because you're so light and delicate.
Yeah, right, exactly.
But dense and strong, too.
Thank you.
No
Yes,
problem.
for noticing.
No problem.
But I think it's what we're talking about. There's this combination of taboo, so we're not talking about it a ton, and yet we're still getting a lot of information. We're just getting it from these like kind of fucked up sources, you know? And so it's like everything we know is not super realistic, and also we think it's right because we're not talking about it with other like human beings. So I think that's the thing that's holding us back. And because it's so simple, again, that's why I also think it doesn't take much to kind of like crack open that communication in a couple, for example, because they've never done this before.
Right.
You know, it's like as soon as you start to introduce it a little bit, it's like, oh yeah, right. Like
This makes sense.
it's not complicated. And like, it makes sense that I have to make sure that everyone's having a good time, that, you know, I need to be a good communicator and I need to be receptive to communication. Kind of like that thing that I trademarked as we talked about, good giving and game. Yeah.
So that's actually, this is going to be a weird question, so get ready.
Okay.
So like there's this idea of the human evolution of sex, right? That included essentially like cavemen used to rape women.
Yeah.
But women have evolved to be able to like gain pleasure from sex.
Yeah.
So is that necessarily the case and that's how we started, and this is just some sort of biological like happenstance, or is there, because like why do we have that idea of like penetrative sex being the only type of sex and that it's like mostly men who enjoy it? And
yeah. Well, I think this is about evolution and evolved species, right? When we say fuck like rabbits, I think the two rabbits are probably just coming together and fucking.
Do female rabbits enjoy fucking though, I guess is my question.
That's the thing. I mean, I can't say for sure, but my hunch is that most animals, especially animals that are not as evolved as humans, are probably not getting or seeking, let's say, pleasure from sex. I imagine, I mean, in a kind of way where just like males of the species can dominate women, there's probably no utility to women enjoying it even, or to female animals enjoying it. But if a female animal is going to enjoy it, it's going to be a lot easier to procreate with her.
Right.
So I think, I'm not sure about the
I don't know if you've ever seen a female cat in heat.
Oy,
but
oy,
they
oy.
very clearly want to fuck.
Yeah, right. Exactly. There is a
they
biological drive.
really want to fuck.
They will not shut up about
it. Fuck me.
Right, exactly. And from the rooftops.
Someone come fuck me.
Exactly.
My when I lived in Manchester, our house was like the local cat fuck den. And so like every spring there would be like 40 or 50 cats out in our yard just
help someone
lining up for Big Hank. We used to call him Big Hank. He was this giant great cat, and every female cat in the neighborhood would come out to get railed by Big Hank.
I wonder what Big Hank had, if it was just his size or if there was some other finesse.
I don't know, but they would literally, it would be like 50 of them, and then there would be like some other male cats doing it too, but everybody wanted to go with Big Hank. I don't know what it was
good for him
about him, but
well, I mean, there are the parts that are about like survival of the fittest, right?
Yeah.
And like choosing mates based on that. But I think when it comes to human animals, women have clitorises.
It almost seems easier as if like we did it like cats. It's like just like once every year, all the women just kind of congregated in one spot, You know what I mean?
It would be less fun though. If it's a fun thing to do and I only do it once a year and I had to congregate with a bunch of women, first of all, I doubt that any one woman is getting a lot of attention. That seems like you have to move pretty quickly through them. And yeah, I think sex should be fun for everybody.
What if it was like deer and or like moose, and then like all of the men just start fighting randomly, and then the winners get to have, and then the women get to choose which men they have sex with, judged on the winners.
Well,
but it still only happens once a year.
I think the tough thing about that is the winner of the fight, the skills it takes to win a fight are not necessarily the same as the skills it takes to be a good lover.
That makes sense.
So I don't think I necessarily want like the guy with the most brute strength. I actually think I'm pretty sure I don't.
Oh,
do you want to take that down?
Yeah. I gotta switch hands.
Yeah.
This thing is surprisingly heavy.
I bet. I can hold it
after 20 minutes.
Also.
30 minutes.
Ooh,
no, I'm fat. I'm trying to. This is part of my.
Did I mess
no, that's
that
good.
up?
You're
Okay.
good. This is part of my training so that I'm less fat.
Wow.
I don't want to be in shape. I just want to be less fat.
You're gonna have jacked arms.
Slightly less fat. That's fine. Actually, I tore this bicep a couple years ago.
Oh gosh.
And during a play, hardcore Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Wow, you mean business.
Yeah, I wasn't fucking around. And tore my bicep, and I didn't have health insurance. I still don't, so
God,
I just kind of let it do what it's gonna do.
I think we texted a little bit actually when that was going down. I think I remember that. Yeah. Oh, bummer. But what I was gonna say is women, like clitoral tissue, penises and vaginas, like male anatomy and female anatomy, it's really the same. It's just like organized differently.
Right.
So the head of a man's penis is the same as the glands of a woman's clitoris, and there's erectile tissue that goes deep on both sides of her labia. So, I mean, women are built for pleasure, you know?
Right.
And so it makes sense. Why are we built for pleasure if we're not meant to use that?
Right.
You know?
Interesting.
Yeah.
So a clitoris is just like a tiny little penis.
It is. It's like the tiny
or
little
a
head of
penis is just a giant clitoris
with all this extra flesh that
I don't want to say giant I don't want to say giant to give anybody an ego boost. It's perfect. It's an averagely sized it's a normally sized clitoris.
Right, exactly. They come in all shapes and sizes. Everybody is beautiful.
Hold on, I'm gonna put this down for just a second. We're gonna cut real quick.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So from a man's perspective,
yes.
What is the best way for a man to approach, like, I'm not sure if my wife is enjoying sex, I'm not like I want my wife to enjoy sex, and I don't think anybody goes into it actually thinking like,
right,
I don't really care if they enjoy it or not. You know what I mean?
Right.
So like, how can they approach that in a way that is maybe like, not, I don't want to say embarrassing, because like, I couldn't imagine caring that much, but like, how can it, what's like a good way for a man to like broach that subject with maybe their significant other, or someone they've never, like, even if it's like a one night stand, you know what I mean?
I think that, first of all, it is incumbent on both men and women to be able to communicate about this, because I think when a man asks a woman, hey, what would you like? I think that's often a hard question for her to answer if she's used to feeling any kind of shame or any kind of way about what she likes, right? Like, so I do think, you know, women have to liberate themselves a little bit to be able to talk about this stuff. But I think to encourage that for a man, maybe getting a little more into concrete examples. So kind of like we were talking about with peak experiences, like what do you think about when you masturbate? What's something you've always wanted to try that we could try together? What about those peak experiences a little bit? Like, even if I don't want the details of who you did it with, when, and all of that, like what are some things that you know in the past, whether it's porn or real life, that you've really enjoyed, even if you can't explain why? So I think getting into some of that is helpful, being as kind of, you want it to be open-ended, but I think too open-ended invites like a little bit of shutdown. And you want to be genuinely like engaged and interested in the details. So that's part of it. But I think the other thing that's really hard is like, I had this patient not too long ago who her husband, they were a bit older. I want to say in their like late 70s, early 80s, which I love. But he wanted to have sex all the time and she didn't. And one of the things—
Good for him. Good for
honestly,
80 years old.
Rock on.
Jesus.
Exactly. Again,
rock hard.
Yeah, I imagine so. And if you've got it rock hard at that age, you've got to use
absolutely.
it. You know?
Absolutely.
But so we were talking about it, and she was like, yeah, well, he just like, he'll do anything. He'll like massage me forever and ever. And it's like, that sounds nice, but if massage is not the thing that turns you on, it doesn't matter. And so I think assuming like, oh, every woman must want you to like go down on them for hours, maybe, I think a lot of women probably do, but
it's a good place to start.
It's not a bad place to start, definitely. But if all else fails, you could definitely just start trying things like that for sure. It's a step in the right direction. But I think it's also like, don't assume like, oh, well, if I just massage her long enough or whatever, that's going to be the thing. You need to really get into what someone's particular interests and likes are, and not kind of what you think generally is enjoyable. That said, also doing more chores around the house is always hot. That's a whole other topic.
That's gotta be too, like, at being 80 and coming into that though, that must be like, because you've seen the whole width and breadth of the sexual spectrum in your life, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's like in the 40s, nobody fucked.
Right.
And then if you were a woman and you got sent to you had to go to the doctor to get jerked off.
Right.
At that point, and then fucking.
Thank God it existed.
Yeah, right.
The only good thing about female hysteria.
Women falling into hysteria.
Right.
Because they were never.
I have to go 3 times a week.
They were never finishing.
Right.
That's gotta be awful.
Right.
And then, so then like you start there. And then, like, you go through the sexual revolution and all that stuff.
Right.
I mean, by the time you get to now, you must not know what the fuck is going on.
Well, and I think you may have seen that evolution happen as, like, a spectator, but it doesn't mean it was, like, the evolution in your life, depending on when you got partnered. So, like, the reason I mentioned sexless marriage, pelvic health, like, these are all reasons I got into this. But the thing that had me, like, go ahead and get the LLC and like start doing the coaching was that I had another patient who was in her 70s. I was treating her for pelvic floor conditions not related to sex. I asked her that question that I mentioned I always ask. And one of the other questions I ask is, as far as you know, are you able to have an orgasm alone or with a partner? And she didn't know. And the joke among women anyway is always, if you don't know, man, hasn't happened. And so I said, okay, well, I always recommend the Hitachi Magic Wand, getting on the toy trip a little bit. Great vibrator. I recommended it to her. She got it, used it for a couple of weeks, I assumed. Came back in for another visit a bit later, and I was like, oh, how's it going with that wand? And she said, I
have not left my apartment in 3 weeks.
No, she didn't know if she was using it right. And this is a woman in her 70s who had raised 2 kids, right?
Wow.
So I'm like, this is criminal, man, right? Like, this woman, she's definitely procreated, right?
Yeah.
That part is fine. But like the pleasure piece had totally eluded her for her whole life. And so that's just kind of what made me realize, like, we make a lot of assumptions about what people know or the kind of sex they're having, or that women are enjoying it, for example, right? And I don't care how many years of experience you've had necessarily, there are people who don't know the mechanics of it, who don't know the basics, And that actually brings me to one other point that I think is kind of interesting. I think part of the problem too is, there's this joke that women fake orgasm. What a horrible thing for us to do, right? Because then we're also giving feedback to men like this is something we enjoy. They don't know, right? They're getting that feedback from us. And so we also really have to make sure, okay, when I'm communicating, if I want this to be over because it's not good, I don't have to break somebody's heart and say, this sucks, get off me, right? But I could be like, you know what, like, I'm just not feeling this right now, and then communicate about it when it's like a little bit less fraught.
Right.
So again, that's where I think a lot of it comes down to like women's communication. We have to get over some of this shame that I think we've carried in not believing that we're kind of just like sexual creatures in our own right, and be able to communicate effectively.
I think there's also something too about like aging, where like, I mean, when you're a teenager, you're pretty much ready to go whenever.
Right.
There's like any moment of the day at the drop of a hat.
Right.
The wind changes direction and you're ready to go.
Right.
But then as you get older, like sometimes you're just not into it.
Right.
Or like sometimes, and like that's okay. And it's not like it's neither negative towards you or your partner, hopefully.
Right.
Right. But like even if everything is perfect, some days you just might not be feeling it.
Right. Well, and I think that gets at this idea there's spontaneous and responsive desire, right? When we're kids, because we've never done this stuff before and our hormones and all of that, we have spontaneous desire all the time. Like we are ready to go, even with the same partner for an extended period of time, potentially. But as we get older and as we're with a partner for a long period of time, spontaneous desire is always going to decrease. So meaning that kind of desire where I'm just like out of nowhere, like, cool, ready to go, like I'm horny, whatever. I think then it turns into responsive desire a lot, which is like, I may not feel into it now, but if we start making out or start doing whatever, I will get into it. It might take me a little time, but I'm not going to wait for the mood to strike. I'll be waiting forever. I need to just, it may sound unsexy, but like schedule sex, look forward to when I'm going to have sex, and then start making out again and like doing all those other things, using lube, doing whatever it takes to get into it and then to enjoy it. Because I'm not men or women. We're not going to be like super hot for the same person forever and ever.
So let me ask, so with that in mind, how would someone like know that, like, how could someone tell that like they're just not into it that day, versus like, or like, let's say they start and then like, they're like, nope, this isn't happening. Like, how do they recognize when like, okay, this isn't going to happen?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like when they've given it the old college try.
Yeah, definitely. I think that is where working with like a coach or a counselor can come in, because then I think you can be really sure, you get a little guidance on like, okay, how do I approach this to make sure that it's not just like my own biases or whatever that are making it seem like I'm not interested. And then I think if you've done kind of that legwork, and you still feel like true low libido, well, hormonal changes for men and women can affect that. There are medical interventions that can improve that sort of thing. And so I think it's kind of a matter of making sure that you've dealt with all the potential like psychosocial contributions first. And when you're confident with that, then go ahead and get some medical intervention. That said, people could also just go to their doctor and say, you know, even a PCP, and say, hey, I think I'm dealing with low libido, and see if there are some of these like oral medications really nowadays, not just erectile dysfunction meds, but stuff for women with low libido that can help that. And so you also could try that and see if it makes a difference.
Right.
And then of course, like SSRIs, there are medications that will cause low desire. So looking at all of the other things that might be contributing, I think, is useful.
It's so crazy how it's like, there's this one side of it that's so like medical and you talk serious about it, and yet there's some time, if I hear the word penis, I'm gonna laugh. You know what I mean? It's like, there's nothing I can do.
Very mature of you.
It's very well, you know, we all got our issues. We all got our issues. You know what I mean? I'm happier than most people, so.
Right. And if the word penis can make you laugh, then you know
We
you
all
always
gotta
have a way to laugh.
We gotta laugh sometimes.
Right?
What is like the number one sort of like, if you could change, if someone's having a hard time,
Yep.
what's like the first, what do you think is like the number one thing that most people could change that would just like change their dynamic or change their sex life with their partner or not their partner, I guess. We keep saying partner, but I feel like this is also an issue for like communication. Like this must just be an issue for like one night stands. It must be even harder.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Because like you don't want to interrupt the
Right.
moment of whatever to be like,
Right.
hey, would you prefer penetrative sex
Right,
or
exactly. Here's the menu of
on
options.
this chart?
Yes, exactly.
I'm very a la carte here.
Yes, exactly. Well, I mean, I think one night stand, you have the benefit of probably a little bit more of that spontaneous desire. So your juices are flowing a little bit earlier without having to get warmed up often. And that can be helpful. But no, I think you're right. And I think whether it's partnered or solo or one night stands or whatever, that's why the most important thing I think anybody can do is have a really good understanding of their own likes and dislikes, the ways they like to be touched or not, things like that. Have that good relationship with yourself sexually first so that you can communicate and you even know what to communicate with a potential partner. So yeah, I would say doing solo sex is super, super important.
So like to I think most people, the idea, like I just said, like sort of interrupting the moment
Yep.
to bring that up. Do you think, I mean, that's from a man's perspective. Do you think from a female perspective, would that be better? Do you think like women would appreciate that?
If someone like gave them options?
Yeah. Well, if someone was like, hey, before we get started, what are you into? Like, real quick.
Yeah.
Lightning round, real quick. Tell me what you're into so that I can make sure that this is enjoyable and
Yeah.
pleasurable for you rather than just guessing.
Yeah, well, and I think, there are different ways to go about it. I think, there are the extremes. An a la carte menu is one end of the extreme that
Would
may
probably
not
be
feel,
sick though.
If you had it, someone might be like, how often do you do this? You have a menu bedside ready to go.
But they might appreciate it as long as you were upfront about it.
Hey, I agree, definitely. But I think there are ways to communicate stuff that are like sexy in the moment too, right? So like, I think just asking, even in the middle of doing something like, do you like this? do you want faster or slower? Do you want, like kind of giving people options in the moment can be part of talk during sex that people can find hot, but it's also serving to provide needed communication. So I think asking questions, in the moment for the person who's, let's say, leading the action, and that's a whole other topic, and the person who is receiving the action being authentic in their communication, verbal, nonverbal, all of it, so they're giving the right cues for what they enjoy.
Do you find that most of your clients are like older, younger? Do you find, I don't know, when you're like let's say you have a client, do they come in together? Do they come in by themselves?
Both, yeah. So usually if I'm doing intake, I like to do that intake with a solo person if we know that the focus is primarily going to be on like they have a partner who's ready to go, but they have some suspicion that their own shame or like a lot of hangups that they deal with individually are the issue, then I'll meet with that person individually for intake. And we may bring a partner in for a session or two because that's helpful, but it's not like we're focused on the unit, the couple as a unit over the course of working together. If it's a couple who is really coming in with a shared issue, and it's kind of on the client to decide how they would frame their issue, then I'll see a couple together at intake. No matter what, if it's a pair, at some point I like to meet with both of them at once. Again, because I think that communication barrier, I can send someone home to have some communication, and it's a lot different when it's like, two people, they have all this history around their communication, all these stories about one another, whatever, that when you're in a clinical setting, it's a lot easier. It's just kind of, more practical and factual.
Well, it's also easier for you to maybe broach subjects that they normally can't, or like they're used to shutting down. Totally.
Whatever. And to normalize stuff that like maybe someone has really pathologized that they don't have to, right? Like, around low desire, or even like the way people react to sex, or if orgasm is difficult or not, which as an aside too, I think we've thought forever, there's this idea that like, oh, well, women take so long, and like, wouldn't it be great if women were faster? Which I also find hilarious, because I'm like, do y'all enjoy having sex or not? If you enjoy it, why are we trying to get this over with in 5 minutes? If she takes 45 minutes, sweet, we just had sex for 45 minutes. Like,
that sounds great.
And I know like having kids and like, schedules and all of that make that impractical sometimes. So it's worthwhile also to have something quick and dirty up your sleeve that, you can rely on.
Old faithful.
Exactly, for both partners. But I think, if we enjoy it, I'm not trying to like be done in 5 minutes,
Right. I mean, there's a lot of stuff I feel like just you don't really think about with sex. Right. Whether that's because, I don't know, like there's no, even like the education around sex has always been, because it's not like you can ask your parents when you're growing up. And then it feels like by the time you're 18, everybody just kind of expects you to know what to do.
Right.
So there's like no education, and then nobody to ask, and then no like follow up. Right. So like that's a tough spot.
Well, I think the hard thing about it too is some people can appreciate that they have, let's say, sexual dysfunction or some sexual problem, right? We think erectile dysfunction is a
Do you want to go through the
problem.
tunnel?
Ooh, that'd be kind of cool. You want to?
Yeah, sure. Cool. We'll have to go single file.
That's cool.
We're going to go through the tunnel.
I've never seen it that open, I feel like.
It might be wet. It might be too wet on the bottom. What kind of shoes?
I got good shoes for that. I wore them on purpose. Yeah.
I don't, but nobody asked about no one cares about me.
Oh, man, so neglected. See, there's communication.
No, it looks dry.
But then you spoke up about your needs, Nick.
It looks dry, which is sort of fitting for this conversation.
We're going through the dry tunnel.
We're going through a dry spell.
Here we go. Oh my gosh. It's so tall too.
Yeah, no, I don't really know I don't know if it's for walking under, because it's not really big enough to stand up in.
Yeah, no.
But it's not really, it doesn't feel like it's made for water. It feels like it was made to walk through, so I don't know.
It's funny from back here, just the perspective, it looks like it's constantly narrowing.
Yeah.
I'm
actually just was thinking to myself that I'm noticing myself get ducked lower and lower, even though the tunnel is the same size.
Right.
That's funny.
No, that's cool. I feel like it's usually been full of water though, otherwise I would have done that before.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the design was set up for it to be walked through, because it makes sense, but it's not really big enough.
Right.
So I don't know.
Right.
Weigh in if you're in the comments.
Yeah, exactly. But okay, so people think they have like sexual dysfunction. There are those things that we all appreciate are sexual dysfunction. Usually we're looking at male sexual dysfunction because we think women shouldn't really be that into it anyway.
Right.
So when a man's not into it, we're like, uh-oh, there's a problem. But I actually think there's sexual dysfunction in like any relationship where a woman has low desire. You know, I just don't think we consider it that. We kind of consider it like, oh, that's just the way it goes. And that is where I think we get robbed because it's like, no, that's not normal, man. And there's tons that you can do about it. So why live like that?
Are there any, if someone's like too embarrassed to come see you, but like they do realize there's a problem and they want to fix it, is there anywhere they can go that is like, I know you mentioned like another podcast.
Yeah.
Is there somewhere they could go to like get more information, books, videos, that kind of thing, other than just like searching out the most degenerate porn they can happen to stumble upon and seeing if they're into it?
Has its place, don't knock it. But yeah, a few things. So one, I'm on Substack. I post a lot of these like general concepts that I talk to people about all the time on Substack, which is also the blog on my website. So however people like to read that stuff, it's there. There is an app, or I guess it's a website actually, called OMG Yes, that is all about women's pleasure, the science behind women's pleasure, and like straight up techniques for people to understand. Most of the subscribers on that website are straight men. I think the one little danger about that is kind of like we were saying, it's so individual that like, I don't want a man to get a technique and be like, yes, and then like trot it out on every woman he meets thinking like, oh, well, I saw this on this website once, right? I mean, that's not so different from porn.
It's just like Kung Fu, you know what I mean? You want to have all of the techniques so that way you can pull them out when there's the appropriate time for them.
Plus, would you call Kung Fu an art?
Yes.
Yeah, so, okay, then yes, I totally agree. That's a good resource.
So, just, sorry, now I need to explain that joke.
Okay.
So there's 5 types of Kung Fu, and then every type of Kung Fu neutralizes another type of Kung Fu.
Oh.
So it's like if you're like Mantis style, and then like Mantis style may be useful against like Crane style, but like not vice versa. You know what I mean? So knowing which one,
highly individualized.
Yeah, knowing which one you need to use, like, I guess it would be easier just to say it's like unlocking a lock.
Yes.
Like having the right key to unlock a lock.
Yes, and I like that too because there are way more than 5 styles of what people are
You want
into.
like that giant, you want to be like that janitor
key.
with the giant chain.
That's true, right. It's not the one master key, exactly. You got to be the janitor with the keychain, for sure. Even more than that.
The janitor with the keychain of love. That's what you want to be.
Exactly. As many partners as you have are keychains, or keys on your keychain. Exactly.
But they're not a collection, they're people.
Thank you, yes.
All right.
They're not
There's a lot of nuance to this conversation.
Exactly. I always confuse analogy and metaphor, but there's a lot of...
One of those two things is happening. Maybe both.
Probably
Fuck it, could be both.
Poetry, yes.
They're both keys on my keychain. You know what I mean?
Oh, you only have 2?
Yeah, metaphor. And if I can't woo them with a good metaphor or analogy, then I'm out of the game. If that doesn't, if that doesn't prime the pump, I'm out.
Right. I think that's reasonable.
I might throw down a pun just to see. You know what I mean? I'll be like, I don't know. Do you want some charcuterie? Because you sure are cute to me. And then if that doesn't do it, then I'm out.
If the panties don't melt, then
it's the end of the day for me. I'm just gonna go home and play video games.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, I think that's like you were saying with like the mating habits of different animals. I think if you're the guy who like the pun is it, then great. If you're not into the pun, totally.
I don't want you anyways.
We weren't meant to be together. Yeah, definitely.
That's the other thing. If you get really good with one key, then you know if that's what you like, that you should find someone else that likes that too.
That's true. Okay, yeah.
There's a lot of ways to go about this.
Yes, I'm trying to connect that dot.
There's 8 billion people on the planet.
Yes.
So you need 8 billion keys, I guess.
Yeah.
You can have sex with all of them. Well, not the children.
Yeah, the consenting adults.
I'm gonna cut that.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I'm gonna go back to what you said. You could have sex with a lot of them.
Yes, a lot of them. As many as you want to and want to with you, for sure.
As long as they're
consenting. And why not? Exactly. We're gonna die someday.
Do you think that there's something? Because again, just going back to like the straight thing.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's something inherently sort of like? Because for a long time, like being gay was kind of seen as a kink, right?
Yeah.
Like, is there just something about being gay that just makes you more open and communicating about that sort of thing? Is it like a power thing? Is it like a...
I think it's the gendered role thing. So like, I wrote a blog post about this. People who really want to read it and like fight me on it can certainly go check it out.
Go fight her on it.
Go fight about it. But it's like the difference between sex and gender, right? So this is like all the debate about this now too is like so pointless to me, because sex, sure, most people have a penis or a vagina or a vulva or a penis, right? Those are two sexes. There are like 20 actual ways that people could present sexually, right? So beyond just like men and women in terms of combinations of hormones and genetics and all those other things that could
You
have
can have boobs
present.
and a penis.
You can definitely be born with boobs and a penis,
You can
for
be
example.
born with boobs and a penis.
That,
Or a vagina and a beard.
go on.
Those are the only two examples I can think.
Yes.
Boobs and ass hair.
Or, yeah, totally. Or like, I mean, there's like people with really large clitorises that are almost penis-like, but have a vagina, right? Like there's just so many permutations of sex. So that aside, gender is something truly that we made up, right? Like there are some things that biological men and women might be more drawn to or have like more proclivity for, but for the most part, like gender is something we made up. Well, we take it so seriously, especially in relationships between men and women, that it actually limits us a ton, right? Again, like on a super basic level, that men are going to be aggressive and initiating and women are going to be receiving and kind of waiting and demure, right? Does not have to be true, but it's something that we kind of made up about men and women. And so we can really get trapped in that and not feel free to express ourselves or to do the things we really want to do because we're so stuck in these gendered things. I think when you look at gay relationships and queer relationships, the gendered piece, gendered expectations are taken out of it. Because if you have two women, well, you know, surely there's topping and bottoming and there's all this queer culture stuff that we could get into. But you have to kind of go based on what you actually enjoy then, because the playbook for who's supposed to do what is thrown out a little bit.
Right.
And I think that's where straight relationships can really benefit from learning a thing or two from queer relationships, because it's like, okay, yeah, sure. There's some mechanics, key in the lock thing, right? If I think about like penis and vagina sex, right? Like, sure, that's clear enough. But the gendered realm of it and just like opening it up to,
like a masculine man will never have a pinky up his butt.
Yeah, people might think so.
Right, you know what I mean?
Right. And a masculine man
might think so, but that's like I was just trying to think of like a gendered stereotype.
Well, and I think that's a really good example though, right? Because a masculine man, he might never get to know if he'd enjoy something like that because he'd think, well, that's gay or that's feminine or that's whatever, and I'm not going to do it.
Men aren't even allowed to eat ice cream without feeling like they're gay these days. It's
honestly,
fucking getting crazy.
Yeah, yeah, he is basically a woman. If he's eating ice cream.
He's eating ice cream in public.
From a cone.
If he's eating ice cream from a cone in public, might as well. Jesus Christ.
I think he is gay.
That's really how it is. It's fucking crazy.
And it's right, and it's really stupid. And also, I think it's also so limiting, and that's part of what makes it stupid to me. Like, why would you want to limit yourself like that? And we also know people are doing crazy shit behind closed doors that they act like they're not into in public, right? And it's like, you know,
it's almost like a stereotype at this point. Someone gets caught doing some weird shit that they didn't.
It is.
Whereas, like, if you just told everybody you're into that weird shit, they'd be like, oh, that's weird, and then they just go about their life.
Yeah, or you can keep it quiet if you want to. Just don't, like, try to legislate on that. Don't try to, like, make other people wrong about it. Just say, whatever you do, it really doesn't affect me. Who the fuck cares? And also, if you can allow me to be that free, you can be that free too.
Right.
So, cool, everybody wins. Like, fingers up the butt for everybody.
Pinkies up the butt for everybody. That's you know what I mean? If you ever run for president, that should be your slogan.
Gosh,
Pinkies up the butt for everybody.
What year in American history is it going to be possible for me to win with a slogan like pinkies up the butt for everybody? I don't think I'm going to live to see it.
No, probably not. I think we're going to...
I don't know if that's a bad
I'm not sure America will make it to that point.
No, I don't know about that
We're
either.
one button press away from end of the world.
Which is exactly why I think people should be having more sex.
Which is why people should be putting fingers up their butt to see if they like it.
Y'all do it now.
Life is short. While you're listening to this,
right.
Pause this podcast.
Yes.
Pull down your pants.
Yes, right now. Exactly.
Water-based lubricant.
Whatever it
not
is you
spit.
want to do. Exactly. Not spit for that, no. Definitely.
Well, this has been informative anyways. This has been probably my most informative podcast.
I'm so glad. And I think it's really appropriate to end on before the end of the world, man. Do the thing you want to do. It's free. It's fun, right? Why not? No time like the present.
Yeah.
You can't.
I completely agree. Do you think? Sorry, last question.
Yeah.
This is the last one. We're not gonna. We actually aren't ending.
Yeah.
Last question. You were. I think it's appropriate to end on, and I was like, "Fuck."
Yeah, no.
I have more to talk about.
Yes.
I can talk for a long time.
I love this stuff, obviously.
Do you think that there is, or like, hold on, scratch that, restart.
Yeah.
how can like, what do you think is the best way to like approach something new as a couple?
Yeah. I think first establish good giving and game is something that matters. So then you know the judgment piece is off the table, right? So first and foremost, we appreciate that this is a shared value we have in our sex life. And then I think it's kind of like, hey, when there is that judgment-free zone, that context has to be there to be able to try it anyway. So then I think you can feel pretty good about bringing something up fairly freely. I think you can be really explicit. You could, if it's from porn or there's some model of it in porn, watching something like that together and really getting an understanding of it. Or I think it doesn't sound sexy to some people, but I think it really can be. Like, draw up literally or just in conversation with someone before it happens, like, hey, what are the key elements that like you're looking for in this that's going to make this successful to you? And maybe what are the things for either partner that are like, okay, we can try this, but I really want to stop it if it gets to this point. Or like, safe word is so cliche at this point, but yeah, like a safe word.
Well, I think it makes sense too, is like a lot of people, like they just kind of like, in the moment they want to just try something out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Whereas like I think if you don't have to talk about sex when you're only like having sex or in the mood for sex. Like you can talk about something like a week.
Yes.
A week can go by. Yes. And then like you've already discussed it, you've already gotten the go ahead, you already know all the rules and regulations about it, and now you're in the moment.
And if it's something you've never done before, you should talk that moment.
Yeah.
Because if it's in the moment too, I think, depending on the person, they might feel pressured, or it might feel like, it's not the greatest context to try something brand new.
It may not even be the best context to bring something up.
Not
because you could be like, hey, are you into this? And they'd be like, no. And then now that's killed it for you.
Right.
And now you're both kind of like wrestling with those emotions.
Right. And you might feel judged when in another context, when you could talk about it, not like in the heat of the moment, there wouldn't be judgment at all, you know? And then you're like, cool, I get to negotiate this instead of being like, oh no, I brought this up. It was the deepest, darkest thing about me.
Right.
They absolutely shut me down. I'm disgusting. What am I going to do?
I didn't spend $40 on water-based lube to not have this work out.
Waste of money. You cannot return that.
No, absolutely not. Although, can you? Yeah, and I do think too, like bringing it up and just being super, like not leaving any gray room.
Yes.
Be like, agree. I want someone to put a pinky up my butt, and then not be like, just kidding, unless
right.
You wanted to do that. No, I don't want you to do that. I don't want you to do that. Or do I? You know what I mean? Like being super open about it, and then letting your partner be like, yeah, I can do that. Or no, I don't want to do that. And then at least like, there's like a hard line stop. Right.
And that's that context again of like good giving and game. I mean, obviously shame is something that some people are into, and that's cool too, and we're explicit about it. But I think, understanding like, hey, no matter what you say to me, you can say any kind of outlandish whatever. I may not be into it, but I'm going to hear you about it, and I'm not going to make you wrong about it, so you don't have to feel bad.
Right.
Yeah.
But even those people who are whatever, turned on by shame or whatever, like they can talk about that outside of the moment, and then inside the moment, it's like it's more like a character you're playing or like acting than it is like it's not like your whole life. Like most people don't want to just be degraded for their whole life and shamed for their whole life.
And I mean, I think shame is a good example too. If I don't talk about liking shame outside of the context of sex, but we do it in the context of sex, that's when it starts to get fucked up to me, because now it's like true shame, and where does this stop, right? Where it's like, I want to pretend that it's true shame. I want to create like whatever I need to make it feel as authentic as possible when I'm in the moment. But like, we do really need to understand and communicate what's going on. Otherwise, we can get into some pretty like yucky situations. So yeah, communication is necessary.
Cool. Well, we are back at the beginning of where we started.
Well done.
Nice job.
Yep, definitely.
Where can people find you?
My website's probably the best place. It's Rachel MacNeill, intimacycoaching.com. MacNeill with 2 L's, MacNeill. My blog's on there. They can find me on Substack. Like I said, I'm on social media, but honestly, I don't like it very much, so I wouldn't bother.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing this today. I really appreciate it. And guys, if you're having an issue, she's the one who can help. So
I would love to.
We'll talk to you later. Bye. Bye. Great job.
Pinkies up the butt.
For days.
For days.